Hello and welcome to the Doctor Who Show. I'm Dave.
And I'm Rob.
And this is our story synopsis for the Virgin New Adventure Blood Harvest, which is, of course, our topic for our coming monthly episode, Rob.
It is indeed, Dave. We do one of these every time we do a novel, just so people can catch up or refresh their memory or whatever it might be. Maybe you've never read it at all and you just want to know what happens in the book.
Yes, so this isn't a complete blow-by-blow of everything that happens, but it will certainly give you enough of the plot so that you can follow along with our conversation. Of course, that means we will be including the end of the book, so if you don't want it spoiled, please tune out now. And the other thing we'll say, Rob, is we've structured this one slightly differently to how we would normally do it, because there are a couple of very distinct plot threads that this book flips between. We're going to put the first thread together as a block, the second together as a block, and then when it all comes together, we'll have it as a third block. So, yes, the novel flips between these two plots, but that will just get quite confusing, so the summary's not quite structured the same.
Yes.
I will kick us off then with the Chicago storyline.
Mm-hmm.
On Gallifrey, a trio of mysterious figures use the time scoop, last seen in The Five Doctors, to observe events in Prohibition-era Chicago, 1929. As they watch, they chant, "Death to the Doctor, Barusa lives, Rassilon must die."
In Chicago, private detective Tom Decker, an honest, hard-boiled investigator, is hired by Al Capone to investigate a new speakeasy, Doc's, and its enigmatic owner, Doc. This is the Seventh Doctor, operating undercover and running a bootleg liquor operation designed to embed himself within the criminal underworld.
The Doctor soon gains Capone's trust, aiming to work quietly with him to ease tensions between rival gangs and prevent an all-out gang war. Meanwhile, he brews illicit alcohol using the TARDIS, including its swimming pool, to maintain his cover. Ace has joined in, adopting the role of gun mole. This is no mere facade. Early in the story, she shoots a gangster dead inside Doc's.
The Doctor's peace efforts are repeatedly undermined by a mysterious, tall, thin man with red eyes, whose interference pushes the gangs toward escalating violence. Shootouts, ambushes, and bloodshed follow, culminating in situations that echo real historical events, including the notorious St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Eventually, the red-eyed figure manipulates Capone into turning against the Doctor. Although the Doctor seemingly walks into Capone's trap, he has a larger plan to play to defeat his real target, but is forced to flee when Ace and Decker intervene.
Frustrated, he reveals the truth to Ace and Decker. He is in Chicago to trap Agonal, an Eternal who feeds on and amplifies evil, and who has been operating in the guise of the Red-Eyed Man, causing all the gang mayhem in order to feed on it.
We'll cut now to the E-Space storyline.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the Gallifreyan observers turn their attention to E-Space, focusing on the planet last seen in state of decay. Once again they chant, "Death to the Doctor, Barusa lives, Rassilon must die."
Bernice Summerfield arrives on the unnamed vampire planet at the Doctor's suggestion, investigating reports of renewed vampire activity within its feudal society.
The inhabitants, who overthrew their vampiric rulers a decade earlier, and their descendants still live under a rigid hierarchy of peasants and nobility and are haunted by the legacy of Zargo, Camilla, and Orcon.
Bernice soon encounters a vampire within the rocket ship overlooking the village, confirming that the vampire threat has indeed returned. As mysterious deaths mount, it becomes clear that this resurgence is tied to the lingering influence of the great vampire.
Investigating further, Betty finds the remains of the Great One, but on closer inspection, notices parts of his corpse have been removed.
During her investigation, Bernice meets Romana, who has chosen to remain in E-Space following the Tarrel's liberation. K9, it seems, continues to serve as Lord High Administrator to the Tarrel leader, Birok.
Together, Bernice and Romana investigate the growing threat, with the aid of old friends Ivo and Kalmar, and we see that the peasants and nobles are being manipulated into conflict, much the same as the gangs in Chicago, by the same red-eyed figure.
Romana and Bernice work to counter this influence by organising a peace summit between the peasants and the lords, which ends after the leader of the Lord's delegation and Kalmar are brutally murdered.
Investigation leads them to Lord Sargon, who initially presents himself as an ally with a scholarly interest in vampire history. However, during a nighttime exploration of his castle by the two ladies, his true nature is revealed.
Now appearing younger and more sinister, Sargon confronts them directly about their snooping around. Bernice's blaster proves useless against him, and in desperation, she activates a distress beacon given to her by the Doctor.
We now move to the third part of our summary, where it all comes together.
Yes.
Back in Chicago, Agonal has turned the authorities against the Doctor, convincing a police captain that Doc is Doc McCoy, a wanted criminal. With the speakeasy surrounded, the Doctor retreats into the TARDIS with Ace and Decker.
Inside, he detects Bernice's distress signal and sets course for the vampire planet, unaware that the Time Lords observing events are already celebrating because they believe this will give Agonal an advantage against the Doctor that he didn't have on Earth.
Upon arrival, the Doctor gathers a raiding party from the local villagers to rescue Bernice and Romana. Meanwhile, Sargon reveals himself to Ace and Bernice to be Agonal and outlines his plan. He has resurrected feral versions of Zargo, Camilla and Orkon and intends to feed Bernice and Romana to the great vampire who he is regrowing in a tank.
The Doctor's forces arrive just as this plan is revealed, triggering a chaotic battle. Ace and Decker fight the resurrected vampires, though Decker is gravely wounded by Camilla. The Doctor nearly succeeds in trapping Agonal once more, but this time the Eternal is whisked away by the time scoop.
The great vampire then breaks free of the tank where it has been regrowing, only to rise into the morning sunlight and disintegrate. With Agonal's influence removed, the Doctor assures the planet's inhabitants they can handle any lesser vampires who remain.
The TARDIS heads to Gallifrey, where the Doctor makes sure Decker gets proper medical treatment before the rest of them are arrested. At the same time, the three Time Lords who time-scooped Agonal approach the Eternal with a deal. Help them, and they'll give him the chance to finally destroy the Doctor.
Bernice, Ace and Romana are thrown in a cell, but it doesn't hold them for long. Ace uses plastic explosive, disguised as trim on her clothing, to break them out, and the three of them make their way to President Flavia to warn her about what they know.
It soon becomes clear that the three culprits using the time scoop are Councillors Elar, Morin and Wrath, the latter a relative of Goth from the Deadly Assassin. They are working under the official role of the Committee of Three and have the Doctor alone to interrogate him, asking why he is back on Gallifrey, even using a mind probe on him before leaving him under guard.
With Flavia's backing, Bernice, Ace and Romana are able to bring in Castellan Spandrel and his troops, who locate and free the Doctor. He then leads them to a room, last seen in The Five Doctors, where playing a specific sequence of notes on a harp reveals a hidden chamber and the time scoop inside. Flavia is furious to discover it's operational again.
Using a transmat, the Doctor and his companions travel to Rassilon's tomb. There, the three rogue councillors are using a time gun to pull Barusa out of his eternal imprisonment, while Rassilon is locked in a struggle with Agonal. Their plan is simple. They free Barusa while Agonal kills Rassilon and in return gets the Doctor.
But things don't go the way they expect. Barusa, changed by his time in isolation, refuses to go along with their plan. In a final confrontation, Rassilon channels his power through the Doctor, Romana and Barusa, and together they obliterate Agonal.
With Agonal defeated, Rassilon orders Elar, Morin and Wrath to return to the capital and face judgment. He shares a brief moment with the Doctor before disappearing, reminding him of the old saying, "To lose is to win, and he who wins shall lose."
Afterwards, Romana chooses to stay on Gallifrey, where she runs into another time lady, Ruatha, who has a keen interest in vampires and has spent time on the vampire planet herself.
The Doctor, meanwhile, returns to Chicago and sets the recovered Decker up as a co-owner of Docks. That night, Decker and Ace celebrate together before making love.
Elsewhere, Bernice is going through a crate of artifacts she brought back from the vampire planet when one of its minor vampire lords, Yavin, escapes. She's horrified to realise they've just unleashed a stowaway vampire on Earth, but the Doctor is completely unfazed, casually noting that he already dealt with it ages ago.
Bum, bum, bum.
So that's the end of our summary, Rob, and we will carry on with our discussion about that in our main episode to be out on Sunday.
Yes, looking forward to it, Dave.
We will speak to you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.